Hi, kia ora, and welcome to the Creative Matters podcast, where we have really inspiring conversations with artists living in and from Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'm your host, Mandy Yakic. Good morning, welcome back to the podcast. This episode is not like our usual episodes. I'm not speaking with an artist about their life and their creative practice. I am speaking with someone from Resale Royalties Aotearoa. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I think it is a really important topic for all of us to understand. The Resale Royalties Scheme brings New Zealand in line with global standards to ensure artists are fairly compensated when their work is resold. It means New Zealand art resold here and overseas will return a payment to our artists or their successors. Today I'm speaking with Chief Executive Sam Irvine. He explains everything artists, successors and art market professionals need to know about the Resale Royalties Scheme. I recommend you check out their website, resaleroyalties.co.nz, after listening to this episode, which has all the information that you need, set out in a very readable, intuitive way, with PDFs you can download, guidelines, and helpful videos. Thank you to Sam for coming on the podcast, and also thank you to all the incredible New Zealanders who worked so tirelessly and fought really hard to get this Resale Royalties Scheme up and running, making sure that artists get paid what they deserve. Kia ora, Sam.
Kia ora, Mandy. Good to be here.
It's very nice to have you on the Creative Matters podcast. Thank you very much for your time. I am sure that what you're going to talk about is going to be of interest to most of my audience, and that is the Resale Royalties Aotearoa Toi Huarau, which really does affect so many artists and gallerists and art market professionals, and also successors of artists.
Yeah, so perhaps if I start at the beginning, which is Resale Royalties Aotearoa Toi Huarau is the business we set up to manage the scheme. But actually, we are under some legislation. So the Artist Resale Royalty Act came into being in 2023. And so all the definitions you see around who's an eligible artist, what's a qualifying resale, what is visual art, are all part of this legislation. And you can find links to that on our website. But everything we reference around definitions is basically a parliamentary definition and gone through that process. So we're just helping enact it. It came about as a result of some discussions around the free trade agreement. And it had actually been talked about in New Zealand way back in the 90s quite seriously and got through into, I don't think it got to select committee, but it was certainly put up as a bill and was voted down. So it wasn't until the free trade agreement took effect or was negotiated with the EU and the UK that it came into effect. And that was in 2022 was that free trade agreement. Then 2023, it went through the House and became legislation. And the Ministry of Culture and Heritage were then tasked with finding someone to help them administer the scheme and launch it. And we were the lucky recipients of that. So we have a contract with government to deliver the scheme for 7 years. So we set about setting up a business to do that. So we being Copyright Licensing NZ, we currently look after distributions to rights holders for writers and authors. And we also had been working with visual artists around a copyright licensing scheme for auction houses. So anyone who's listening who hasn't signed up, I'd encourage you to do that through our website. And that means that every time an image of your work is used to promote an auction house auction, you are able to receive some compensation and benefit for that. So I think last year it was about $55,000 that we paid out to visual artists, and
Wow.
we're seeing it grow all the time. So this year will be an increase on that again. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's well over 200 artists who have signed up for that.
That's amazing. And so does the auction house pay for that?
No, not
that royalty.
No, the vendor does. So the auction house usually passes that through to the seller because the seller owns the physical work, but they don't own the image in terms of that's in copyright terms. So they're using your image to sell their work. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it's not a significant amount, but it certainly adds up for artists, and these sort of times every little bit counts, right? So
Mm.
yeah.
And does that also apply for magazines and other publications that use an artist image?
No, those would need to be negotiated separately. So, for example, when an artist's work's used within a book, there's usually a separate negotiation that happens with the publisher or the author of that book, and they should then be paid a royalty for every time that it's used as within a copying environment, or otherwise they'll get some benefit through the sale of the book. But that would obviously be a negotiation between the artist and the writer, author, or the publisher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we set up Resale Royalties Aotearoa, launched in December the 1st. And part of the launch campaign was to get art mark professionals, which is defined in the Act. So that's anyone who is involved in the secondary sale of art, and artists to sign up so that we would be able to communicate with them around any changes or just what was happening. And then for artists, we're obviously able to find them a lot easier. So it's our job to, once the resale has been completed and it is deemed a qualifying resale, then we need to find the artist or their successor. So that's the part that we'd really like people to register first for, and then we're able to communicate them with them really quickly.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And so, as you said, that can be done quite easily through your website.
Yes, through the website. So resaleroyaltiesaotearoa.co.nz. The other thing I'd just like to say is we actually had a shortened period of time from when we negotiated the agreement with the ministry and when we had to launch. We'd sort of suggested as part of our proposal that we needed a good 12 months to be able to do that work properly, and I think we ended up with like 7. So I'm really, really proud of what we developed in terms of a brand and communications, and I think it's very relevant for our times for the visual art community in New Zealand, I think it was a great piece of work by a lot of people to bring that to market. So yeah, really, really proud of that.
Yeah, that's something to be proud of. And it's so great that New Zealand finally has a scheme like this for artists, because
Yeah.
obviously it had been introduced in other countries quite some time ago. Why do you think New Zealand was a little bit slow to take it up?
Oh, I don't know about, there had to be a time and a place and a reason, and I don't think all those 3 things came together at the right time. And so the free trade agreement really was an opportunity for it to become legislation. Other countries, Australia's had it since the 70s, I think. I might be wrong with that. Certainly in the UK, it's been around a long time, and all through Europe. So at the moment, we are negotiating with these other countries for what are called reciprocal agreements. So if a New Zealand artist's work is sold in the UK and Australia, we're also talking to France and the Netherlands, and all the EU countries, then they'll be able to receive benefit for that in line with the terms within those countries, and vice versa. So if an Australian or a UK artist sells a work in New Zealand, then they'll also be able to receive the benefit of that through our resale royalty scheme.
That's so great. And so if an artist is registered with you, then you'll be able to track down that artist if you get an inquiry from another country.
That's right. Yeah. So we would work quite closely with, there's actually 2 agencies in the UK, and we'd be able to provide them with a list of all the registered artists, and that would make it a lot easier for that to happen. So certainly encourage anyone who knows of their art being sold in those markets to register, and then we're able to facilitate that very quickly.
The royalty is really for artworks that are over $2,000. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. The initial floor, I think, came out in discussion at 1,000. It was then, once it passed into the law, part of that was increasing it to 2,000. And so that's what the legislation says.
And so what happens if it's an artist just starting their career, but they're able to get, 2,100 for an artwork, but they're not established at all, or they're maybe just an emerging artist or an artist who hasn't even been represented by a gallery yet. What happens to those people? Are they just as eligible as everybody else?
Yeah, absolutely. But there's no sort of age defining limit or anything. It's the qualifying resale is quite simply about being a visual artwork and then being of value. So as long as it's over 2,000, and obviously we're able to find them or they've registered with us, then we'll be able to pay them their royalty.
What happens if somebody just whacks on a price and you don't see it as being that value?
Yeah, there's a few checks we can do. So far we've had all the major auction houses reporting, and it's all been absolutely fine. So a lot of them are public record anyway. There'll be an auction, and people will be able to see the price that was received for it. Where it's negotiated, then that would be reported. There's checks like through the digest. So there's a sales digest for artworks through public auction houses, and we think, being a small market, we'd also get some feedback from artists or art market professionals around other sales, perhaps where they weren't being reported. But so far, we haven't seen that. We've seen galleries, auction houses, everyone reporting sales. So, yeah.
Mm. And what is your definition of an original visual artwork?
Yes, well, I'd encourage everyone to look at this. Is a downloadable PDF from our website, and it's got a little flow chart of what is. So it's not actually our definition; it's in the legislation. So there's sort of 3 or 2 checklists here. So I'll just work through what they are. If any of the following boxes are checked, the work is a visual artwork. So cultural expressions of Māori or Pacific peoples. Painting, drawing, carving, engraving, etching, lithography, wood cutting, printing, including a book of prints, sculpture, collage, modelling, craftwork, ceramics, glassware, jewellery, textiles, weaving, metalware, furniture, photography or video art, multimedia art created using computers or other electronic devices, ethnic or cultural art that is a variation of any type of work described above in the second through final bullets. It doesn't include a building, a dramatic work or musical work, or a literary work. And then, to be original, the visual artwork must have been created by or under the authority of an artist, or one of a limited number of copies of visual artwork made by that artist or under their authority. So that's an interesting one about original. So in terms of prints, it's really up to the artist to define what it is. So, what is that number? So there's nothing within the legislation that says it's 10 copies or 100 copies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the print just needs to be over $2,000, and that's eligible.
Correct.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so if I'm an artist living in, say, Poland,
Yeah.
and my work sells in New Zealand, is it just it's the same as me being in New Zealand, basically, if I'm registered?
Yeah. Yeah. The correct term is New Zealand resident or, obviously a reciprocal country resident. So these are for works, or a citizen. And I think there's another one about it's a definition around where you're domiciled, or I can't remember the exact wording, but it's within the Act.
Right. Yeah. So these royalties that are now, you're able to claim these royalties. What happens to work that you might have sold 3 or 4 years ago?
No, that's not covered. So it's anything after December the 1st, 2024.
Okay.
So if the work was sold 3 or 4 years ago and it comes up again in the secondary market for resale, then it'll be covered. But no, it's not retrospective at all.
Okay. And what happens if people don't apply or claim their royalty?
Yeah, well, we have to hold it for 6 years. So they've got 6 years for us to either find them or for them to claim it. We're pretty good at finding people. We have a research team that works for text, so authors and publishers and rights holders, and we use they use a range of tools to locate those people. So we're reasonably confident that we'll be able to find people. Of course, if they register, on the website. That's really easy. If, however, we just aren't able to find them, then what we're working on at the moment is a cultural fund policy, and that will, after 6 years, the work will be deemed to have been unable to have been located. The person who was responsible, or persons responsible for that work, and it'll pass into the cultural fund.
Right.
We're also hoping that perhaps some of the well-known artists might even choose to make some or all of that royalty available to the cultural fund, and will be it'll be a publicly administered, or a fund that's administered not by us but by a panel, and we're just working through what the criteria would be for those awards, and obviously it would need to get to be a certain value before we're able to start distributing those awards. We do the same with text at the moment. The difference there is we actually take a percentage of the rights holders fee, so the distribution payment, we call it, and that goes into the cultural fund each year, and we distribute that through 4 funds. And at the moment, it's proving extremely popular for obvious reasons, I guess.
Yeah, that's so good.
Mm.
So you mentioned rights holders or right
Yeah,
holders. So
yeah,
that's the person, that's the artist who needs to receive the resale royalty of an artwork
or the successor.
or the successor, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so what is the actual process for somebody wanting to claim their resale
Yep.
royalty?
So firstly, I'd encourage them to sign up before any sale. So any artist that's out there, go to our website, sign up. We'll have the link in the intro to the podcast. Secondly, if they don't sign up, we'll still find them, or the successor, and we will then contact them. So payments are going to be made quarterly. So they won't be made immediately after an auction. There is a mandated period for reporting and then payment of the royalty. And so quarterly works in with those timings. And then what we will do is we'll send a notification to the artist or their successor, and there'll be an online portal they'll go to prove who they are, to provide some payment details, and then we'll arrange the payment from there.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned artworks being sold through auctions. What
Yeah.
happens to all of the artworks that are just sold at sort of, the local art gallery, the sort of smaller time art? What happens to those, and how do you contact the artist for those works?
Well, as long as it's a qualifying resale, so if it's over $2,000, then it'll need to be reported by that person or organisation, which will be deemed as an art market professional. So if they're reselling art, I mean, I think there's a question around, gallery stores and shops and things. If they're purchasing the art, so they've purchased it to resell it, then it falls under this. But if they're selling on commission, then it's obviously an original, so it wouldn't be part of the royalty.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So if a gallery has a show full of works over $2,000, um,
Which are second sales, so they've already been sold once. If they're
right.
originals, then it's the gallery. Most galleries are selling original pieces, so they're not part of the Resale Royalty Act. But if it's a resale, then it will be.
Okay. Yeah, I get what you mean. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. The art market professional can be a gallerist or a museum. What do you see as the art market professional?
Yeah. So this one here, this is the Artist Resale Royalty Guide for Art Market Professionals. It's a PDF you can download. So I'd encourage everyone now, just find the definition. Who is an art market professional? So this is Section 11 of the Act. It defines art market professionals as a person who carries on business as an auctioneer within the meaning of the Auctioneers Act, an art dealer, an art consultant, the owner or operator of an art gallery that deals in visual artworks, any other person who is in the business of dealing in visual artwork. So it's basically anyone selling art, really.
Yeah. So if a collector was to buy an artwork, are they paying 5% more to cover the royalty?
Well, they're not paying 5% more. The 5% comes off the resale price.
Okay. So the gallerist is getting 5% less.
No, the vendor will be getting 5% less. So someone who's selling a piece of art, so it's a resale. So in the glam sector, because sometimes there isn't, there's obviously quite often not an auction house involved. The liability is shared between the buyer and the seller. With I guess the simple way to look at it is it's usually the seller, so the person who's receiving the benefit of the sale, who the resale is coming off that resale price.
Do you think that the scheme could disincentivize people at all, whether it's the collector, the artist, or the gallerist?
I think the question is, and this comes up as a criticism of these schemes, is, oh, well, you're penalising people collecting art, and that's like, well, no, that hasn't shown to be the case. I mean, what you're doing is incentivising and providing a more sustainable income for visual artists, and that's good for the whole industry. I don't think that a small commission payment or royalty payment is going to be the difference between someone collecting or not collecting art when they go to resell it. And what is it? The tide sort of rises all boats. And I think what we've certainly seen in Australia is a real boom in Indigenous art, and some of that is due to the fact that they have a resale royalty scheme.
Yeah, that's so good. And so the definition of a successor,
Yeah.
is that meaning that if somebody related to the artist because they've died
Yeah,
is eligible to claim the royalty?
correct. Yeah, so it's that's sort of a general term around copyright as well. So it's 50 years from the death of so if there's a number of people involved in the artwork, it'll be the death of the last surviving person who was involved in the artwork or of the artist. And so they will then pass through deed of will, ownership of those rights to someone else or some other persons who are then able to share the benefit of that work.
Okay. And so the royalty goes to them, basically.
Correct. Yep.
And does that have to be written up in the will or sort of formalized somewhere? How do we know that the successor is actually genuine?
Yeah, well, it usually is, and that's something that we're able to do through public record. Yeah. It happens all the time with books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens if there's sort of family dramas about who the rightful successor is? Is that anything that you become involved with?
No. What we would do is pay the successor as noted, and it would be up to the family to resolve that.
And what does the successor need to do? Do they register the same as an artist,
Yep,
or they get
exactly.
in touch?
Yeah, we've already had a number of successes from the sort of, if you like, the larger estates have already signed up with us. So, we've been in contact with some of those, more well-known artists, their successes already.
And how is the rollout going?
Yeah, really good. So we've got over 300 people registered now. So that's a mix of certainly all the auction houses signed up and are reporting, and that's going well. Then we've had a large number of those obviously are artists, and then the first payments are going to be made later this month.
So good.
It'll be the first quarter payment, and we'll see those sort of build up over the next months and years. And really excited to get the cultural fund organised too. So we've seen some great benefits in the authors and publishers sector around the cultural fund we have for them. So it'd be really good to do the same for visual artists.
What do you mean exactly by the cultural fund?
Well, it would be good if some benefactor who is receiving a large amount of royalties was able to gift some of that royalty to the cultural fund, which will have administered by an independent group. We'll need to determine how it's allocated. At the moment with copyright, we have 4 different funds. We have a contestable fund, a research grant, a writer's award, and a 4th one, which is, I now forget that. And so that's how we distribute the funds that we receive from copyright licensing, and then from resale royalty, it'll be the same. So we'd, whatever monies we're able to receive, and if we're able to make some sort of endowment out of that, then we'd be able to have a consistent model of awards every year. which
Mm,
would be great for the sector.
yeah. And how are you finding people are reacting to the scheme?
Yeah, well, obviously artists really well. And the auction houses have been great. We've had really good support from them, and that's been really encouraging. And yeah, I'd like to say thank you to all of them as a group, because I think it's a credit to the auction houses that we've kind of had a pretty seamless introduction of the resale royalty scheme. Yeah, look, it's fair to say some collectors haven't been that pleased with the 5%, but this is operating in over 100 countries in the world now, where we're one of the sort of last of the OECD to do it. And I think they'll see a benefit to the whole sector in the future, which can be good for everybody.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. And as far as gallerists go, people
Yep.
perhaps, the dealer galleries, I guess, are probably connecting with you
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, we've already had one dealer gallery reporting a couple of big sales, so on an artist that they represent. So that's
Mm,
been good.
yeah. And
Mm.
then what happens with the sort of small time galleries around New Zealand?
That's up to them. We would be expecting them to be reporting as per the legislation. So it's law now, and yeah, that I'm sure they will.
But what happens with the people who don't? Is there anything organized for that?
Well, there is. So, we've got a process of auditing the sales that we're able to see. If someone makes an inquiry, like an artist says that we believe this work was sold through this particular outlet, have you received any reporting on that? We would investigate that, and it's up to us as part of our agreement with government to ensure that that is reported and paid. So, yeah, I mean, I hope we never get to that situation, but certainly there's an expectation that we would follow up and ensure that people do comply with the law.
And it's kind of still a transition time, I guess, in some ways. Are you kind of giving people a little bit of grace for a period of time, or is everybody expected now to be, part of the art market professionals? They
Yep.
are expected to be on board.
Well, I think if we're informed that someone has sold a work in the secondary market, so an art market professional, they haven't reported it and they haven't paid any royalty, then we would be asking them to do so. So yeah, I mean, if someone's overlooked it, then that's fine. We're willing to work with them. Certainly wouldn't be taking any proceedings against them, but we'd be expecting them to comply with the law.
That's all really interesting, and it's so fantastic that New Zealand has finally got this kind of scheme happening, which is so great for artists in
Yeah.
particular. Is there any advice you have to anybody out there listening for things that they should be doing?
Yeah, so I think any art market professional or artist who is involved in the secondary art market, or whose work is being sold or they're selling work, should register with us, because then they'll be kept up to date with any changes, and also with they'll be able to find all the advice and guidelines that we've been able to prepare to interpret the legislation in a way that's probably been more readable than what it is in the Hansard or the legislation books. Um, and yeah, that will ensure for an artist that they're easily found and paid, which is a good thing. And for art market professionals, it will enable them to have a conversation with us around what they need to be doing in terms of their responsibilities under the Act for reporting and paying of the royalty. And it also helps them communicate that to their customers. So whoever they're selling art on behalf of, they're able or should be able to point them to us and our resources to explain why it's happening and what is happening. Because it's not the art market professional's responsibility to justify the scheme. It's an act of government, it's legislation, and we're just helping make it happen as well. So we've certainly got a lot of guidelines, advice, and other resources that everyone can use to tell them more
Mm.
about the scheme.
Yeah, your website is fantastic. And pretty much when I read through it, I could answer all the questions that I had in my own head. So I
Right,
highly recommend all of the listeners head on to your website, which will be linked in the show notes.
right. Yeah, we've got some good videos there, we asked the auction houses to all do a bit of an introduction to what they do, and I think that's particularly for artists and sellers and vendors to have a look at that. It's a really interesting look into the little world of art. And yeah, also for artists to register, it's a good place to go.
Yeah. And is there anything else just before we wrap up that you'd like to say or recommend?
No, I think we're really excited about this year because it will be making the first payments in a few weeks, and then we're sort of moving into becoming commonplace, and there needs to be communication to everybody who has an interest in art, because at some stage we'll all be buying and selling art, or creating it, and this is now part of the sector, and it's part of New Zealand's art future, and I think it's a really exciting place to be. So I'd encourage people to get involved, find out a bit more about it, and as I say, register on our website.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Sam, for coming on the
You're welcome.
podcast and demystifying the scheme. Much
Yeah.
appreciated. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners will be having a look at the website and getting in touch. So thank you very much.
Thanks, man. See you.